Okay, so after that retrospective of the original Steven Universe series, I thought I got all the hype over this series out of my system once I finished that video. I didn't. But luckily for me, there are still two big things that happened after Steven Universe ended: Steven Universe the movie and Steven Universe Future, an epilogue series. For this video though, we're going to primarily cover the movie, but I may end up after this making a video on Future to wrap up this sort of marathon I guess I'm now doing. Now, although Steven Universe is still going on at the time, the movie was announced in Comic-Con in 2018, so even though Change Your Mind premiered in early 2019 and acted as a sort of conclusion to the original story, it was sort of clear our time with Steven and the Crystal Gems was not over yet. By Comic-Con in 2019, we got our first full trailer of the movie. I wasn't really there for all the hype behind this film, but watching the recorded reaction on YouTube, it's really fun seeing how excited people were about this movie, and even as I watch the trailer for myself today, I still get filled with a sense of excitement. The film premiered on September 2nd in 2019, and here we are in the future over 2 years since its debut. Many people have already made videos about this movie going in depth on many aspects of it, but now I want to do my own spin on that, and unlike the later parts of season 4 and 5 and Future, I actually watched the movie around the same time it released. Despite the fact I stopped following the series years before, I still ended up giving the movie a watch, and it's hard to really explain why. I suppose my thought process at the time was that a movie seemed like a good way to get back into the series, and it seems like others also had that mentality, as the movie pulled in 1.57 million viewers, while Change Your Mind's premiere was just under 1 million. I wasn't there for the premiere though, ended up watching on demand a few days later. I remember there being a lot of marketing for the film, and I'm a little sad that I didn't watch the premiere, or be in on all the initial hype. Seeing all the ads and promotions now just seemed like it would have been a lot of fun. I also kind of feel this way with some parts of the original series. I know scheduling was all over the place, and HBO Max makes it very easy to watch now, but I don't know. I think it's really cool how the first 4 episodes of season 5 were made into a 1-hour special called Wanted. Getting every bit of that storyline in a single hour and being on the edge of your seats, I think my younger self would have really liked that. Watching the movie for the first time, I loved it, and it made me really want to go back into Steven Universe, but by that point, I was so far behind and had no easy way of catching back up. Maybe the negative word of mouth of later seasons also lowered my motivation, but here I am being one of those people who love Change Your Mind, so maybe listening to scattered opinions of people online is not the best thing to take influence from. Who would have thought? I've rambled long enough now. I should start talking about the movie itself now. So sit back as we take a full dive back into Steven Universe, the movie. Okay, hey guys, this is Post ED here from the future, saying that this video got hit with a lot of copyright hell. It was very painful, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put a filter over most of the video, unfortunately. If you want a fully clean, unedited version of the video, you can find that in the description, where I upload to like a drive or something like that. Yeah, that's just how it has to be. Anyways, on with the video. The movie begins on this really pretty opening credit sequence done by Chromosphere, the ones behind the Dove self-esteem project Steven Universe shorts. These are all really nicely made illustrations, backed up by a song all about Steven and how he's a great and compassionate person. It's a cute starting song, but not one of my favorites. It's worth noting though that it's sung by the Diamonds, which is then transitioned into a very brief recap of the whole story of the Diamonds, and how it all concluded in Change Your Mind, for all the viewers like me who didn't watch it at the time. It's a very vague and simple explanation, so it would still be worthwhile to watch the show yourself. All that would really be spoiled is that pink diamond was rose quartz. You wouldn't know how or why, just the basic info you need to understand this movie's story. It's here where we now get introduced back to the Diamonds, but even more importantly, an older Steven Universe, now 16 years old, placing this movie about 2 years after the original series. Not only does Steven now have a neck, but a different colored star shirt, a pink jacket, and an older voice. I really love this new design for Steven, especially the jacket. The strong pink looks so good, and feels like a natural evolution of his 14-year-old design, but it feels weird calling that design 14 years old when he was such a small child. Like, look at him, he's such a fucking baby, man. I also really appreciated that they translated his wider proportions into what that would look like for a teen. As a kid who was admittedly chubby and given nicknames because of it, I always found some comfort with how Steven was depicted as a pudgy kid, and it was never something they called attention to or made fun of. It's just how he looked, and as I watched the movie, I can now relate to his older body as someone who was also a teen and whose body type was pretty similar. This may not be a big deal to some, but it's just something I've always loved about Steven's design, and this is still something worth bringing up even today when a lot of animated protagonists are frickin' twigs. It seems that throughout these past 2 years, Steven has been working with the Diamonds to correct a lot of their actions beyond simply healing all the corrupted gems, and has now established peace across the universe. Steven hasn't necessarily redeemed the Diamonds though, he's just continuing his efforts to fix a lot of what they caused. It's pretty clear that they've done a lot of this stuff not because they feel remorse for what they've done in the past, but because they want to appease Steven, since their song, Let Us Adore You, is all about how they want him to stay with them, since he's the son of Pink Diamond, who they miss. Even for Steven, it's pretty uncomfortable, but I actually really like their song. It's got good harmony. Connie's also now looking older too. She doesn't really have any big noticeable changes with her design, she's simply older than before. Voice is pretty much the same too. It's just been funny to me how she and Steven are now both closer in height, when their height difference was always kinda humorous to me. She's heading off for space camp, which is pretty much how she gets written out of most of this movie, but not before giving Steven a peck on the cheek before leaving. You know, classic bestie behavior. Don't ask me if they're dating or not by the time of this movie. I gave up on researching that. We now move on to our next song, Happily Ever After, a big recap and reintroduction to all of our main characters. Each of the main four retell the defining parts of their stories, and how far they've come since then. I kinda consider this our proper introductory song for the film, and it's a really good one at that. I love this song for how each person's tale has a similar melody, but with the instrumentation that defines their respective characters. I'm not the best at explaining music, so I hope that made sense. Regardless, it's an awesome song, and one of my favorites in the movie. At this point, all the setup for this movie has been set. Steven and the Gems are living their best lives, the Diamonds are no longer a threat, a new home for Gems is being created on Earth, Beach City is safe, all is well. For about 5 seconds. We immediately get thrown into the introduction of the big new character of this movie, Spinel, as she comes in with a giant injector that implants itself straight into the Earth. I kinda like how she asked before this if he's Steven Universe, just to make sure she's going after the right guy. Spinel's design, even when first seeing it in the poster, always looked really cool to me. This distorted version of an old-fashioned rubber hose cartoon character, you know, with those stretchy limbs, but still with traits like the wild hair, and eyelashes that also double as tear marks. She's got a very unique feel compared to other antagonists in the series, and even if she's not as massive or as powerful as a Diamond, you can still tell that she's a threat from looking at her design and mannerisms at the beginning here. Her dialogue immediately starts to hint at her background, as she recognizes Pearl specifically as someone related to Pink Diamond, already dropping that whoever Spinel is and what her motivations are, they're somehow linked to Pink Diamond, which is probably just gonna mean that she fucked up again. Her lines of frustration about how Pearl was taken with Pink and not her make a lot of sense rewatching once you know what her deal is. I also like how one of the first things she does is kick Steven at least 10 feet across the ground, making it clear that she's going to cause violence. I think many have already praised Other Friends enough for being such a bop, and yeah, this track really is such a fun villain song. This is where the movie really gets to start flexing its higher production values, as Spinel is animated with so much life and bounce to all her movements. She's basically got cartoon logic on her side, as she fights the crystal gems and practically plays around with them, until she starts getting serious by bringing out her weapon. She also kicks Steven again because why not? While all the other gems get poofed, Steven has the advantage of being half human, so it at first seems like the hits from the Rejuvenator only weird out his body, and just like that, Spinel is taken out with her own weapon, letting a last laugh out before poofing. Poofing is such a weird term to call it, honestly. Like, I know it's kind of funny, it's silly, but like, fuck. Those hits Steven took still had their effects though, resetting his gem, so he can't really use his powers anymore, meaning he can't bubble Spinel. This is basically the movie's way of quickly putting Steven back at square one with his abilities. It's a fine enough way of setting him back just for this film, and it does end up tying back into the message of the movie later on, so it works for what it is. For all the other gems, however, they've all been reset back to how they were first made, essentially meaning they all have amnesia. At least the fun little twist with Pearl being reset is that she starts to serve and be loyal to Greg, which knowing the two's history makes this very awkward. It's also hilarious to me how Sapphire says that Ruby straight up won't last the day, like she'll just die and nobody seems fazed by that thought. A whole other song by Pearl is also happening during this whole part, by the way. The movie has a lot of songs and it's usually just taking a few minutes until the next one. I enjoy most of the songs for what they are, but you will definitely notice that. They can just call this movie Steven Universe the Musical and it'd still be the same, honestly. I enjoyed this particular song more when we get to Spinel's part, showing how she was originally nothing like how she is now. She's very happy-go-lucky and calls Steven her best friend, when just a few minutes ago, For real though, she's actually adorable as hell, and I really like Spinel. Her expressions are so good, and you can tell that she just loves being a friend so much and entertaining others, which ends up becoming painfully tragic later on. Bismuth, Lapis, and Peridot are now officially brought into the story, as Steven tells them about what happened, and they realize a lot of stuff I've already kind of explained. With Steven feeling down since everything was literally perfect right before all this happened, our next song, Who We Are, comes in to give Steven motivation. Bismuth is the main singer of this song, which is all sorts of rad, and Spinel ironically gives them the idea of how to bring Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl back. By giving them the pieces of their most defining experiences, they'd be able to remember who they are. This makes up the second act of this film, starting with getting Ruby and Sapphire fused back together. If you're familiar with amnesia stories where characters try to remind characters of who they once were, you'll probably have an idea for how this plays out. It's not anything insanely new, but it acts as a sort of callback to many parts of Steven Universe, not just from all the references to the original series, but showing a lot of what makes the characters who they are and what arcs they went through throughout the whole show, in a very condensed way. Garnet's original fusion is recreated with Sapphire now being the one to save Ruby, but it's still going to take more than that to fully bring Garnet back, although we get to see more of her original fusion design, which is really fun. Isn't It Love is a good song too. That's all I really have to say on it. I don't know what else to say. I like it. The second part of the song is really good. You know, it's Garnet's vocals, so yeah. Also, after this moment, Spinel's memories peak out a bit when she gets really pissed when Steven says he'll leave and be right back. It's a nice bit of foreshadowing for later in the film. Noticing all this stuff with Spinel's behaviors is really what you get a lot out of when we're watching this film. Amethyst is the first person that Steven manages to recover the memories of, through the song No Matter What. The creative part of this song to me is how Amethyst's habit of repeating what others say makes it a duet with Steven, as they montage through different parts of Amethyst's past, from the train they always ride on, to the hole she first emerged from. It makes sense that Amethyst was the first to come back, since all of her life was largely defined by the Earth itself, and a lot of her growth she went through, specifically in Season 3, was spent alongside Steven. Things are starting to go smoothly, until they realize that the world is actually ending. That injector Spinel drilled into the Earth is actually filling it with a poison that will destroy all the organic life on Earth, unless they can get Spinel to turn it off herself. It feels a bit weird to me how they say this injector has enough poison to destroy the whole planet. Like, yeah, it's big, but I think it'd make more sense if it destroyed all of Beach City and everything around it, instead of making it a world-ending event. We don't see any other part of the world, so as far as viewers are concerned, it's really just Beach City at stake, which will work fine since it's the main location of the whole series. Spinel continues to be really cute throughout all this though, despite being the one that caused it. Point is though, a time limit has been set, meaning they gotta bring Spinel back, but Pearl was the only one who even knew Spinel, so she's gotta be the one to come back next. She's still completely loyal to Greg, but they get the idea to remind herself of who she is through Sadie's rock show. The logic's a tiny bit contrived to me, like the conscious theme is of rebellion, but Pearl doesn't have any input, so she's just another audience member, with all her attention being on Greg. But I do like where it leads up to. I'm getting somewhat nicer to the song Disobedient, but it's not really a favorite. It's mainly Sadie's solo section with the really repetitive lyrics that I'm not a big fan of, even if saying sir a lot was the whole point. Amethyst shapeshifting into Rose at the end was a great way to end it though, and I love how it doesn't have a single effect on Pearl. The defining part of Pearl's character wasn't Rose specifically, it was that she grew as a person once she learned how to detach herself from her after she was gone. This leads to our new fusion of this movie, and one that I never saw coming when I first saw this film. A fusion between Steven and Greg. Greg technically no longer exists in this moment, so Pearl now gets to think for herself. The idea of Greg finally being able to fuse when he tried so hard to do it all the way back in We Need to Talk is so satisfying to see, and dear god their fusion is an absolute chat, like, they're both different, man. I'm pretty sure their name is Stag, and they basically combine both the Steven and Greg's love of music into creating the ultimate rock star. They're only in the song Independent together, but they leave one heck of an impression. Pearl also gets her memories back during it, which leads to Opal coming back to duet with Stag, which is really dang cool. This also seemingly starts to bring back some memories from Spinel, with Steven disappearing out of nowhere, and being left alone as his friends take off without her. By the end of the song, Spinel ends up running away. After that fusion, Steven is absolutely exhausted since his gem's still not fully working, but he still pushes through and chases after Spinel, while saying that he wishes everything didn't suddenly change, and he's now dealing with another life or death situation. He's already saved the universe, this boy just wants some dang peace. During this, it's obvious that the injector's damage is getting worse and worse, so things are getting more urgent. Finding Spinel, her memories are starting to properly come back to her, bringing out a lot of sadness from her. When Steven mentions the garden that Pearl brought up, Spinel takes them there. It's a very interesting touch how Spinel's face reacts with happiness when first remembering the garden, but quickly turns to sadness. Once Spinel takes Steven to the garden, we're shown that her purpose for Pink Diamond was to be her best friend, to entertain her with silly antics and games. Pink was starting to outgrow and get tired of Spinel, but the whole time, Spinel was just happy to be a friend and entertain. Putting a smile on her face was simply all that she needed to be happy herself. Even as Pink is getting her own colony by the diamonds, it's clear that she's getting more annoyed with Spinel as time went on. Spinel thought that Pink would be taking her to Earth with her, but then it's fully revealed what exactly happened to Spinel. It's all delivered through what's one of, if not the saddest song to come from Steven Universe, Drift Away. The song itself tells the whole story, but to say it in my own way, to move on and get rid of Spinel, Pink told her that they were going to play a game, the only rule being that Spinel would stay still. And just like that, Pink left without ever coming back, with our poor and naive Spinel believing that one day she would. So she stood there for over 6,000 years, wondering if she was just doing something wrong, until the broadcast at the beginning of the movie tells her the hard truth that she was forgotten, and that Pink moved on to other friends ever since she left. The grief of this realization was so intense that she reformed into the Spinel we know now. We see her gem rotated, hard ponytails unwrapped, and her eyelashes turned into tear marks, as she comes back after remembering it all. Upon learning about this, Steven says what's probably the realest line in this whole movie on how he's not surprised what his mom did. Being this far into the series, Rose having skeletons in her closet ain't really a surprise. Still, Steven manages to calm Spinel down enough so that they can work together to turn off her injector. This is quickly done through the song Found, which is a fine song. I don't really have much feelings on it, and it's a pretty short song anyways. It's got a nice message about moving to find a place where you feel like you're wanted. Yeah, I did like that little bit with Greg and the bathroom joke, washing his hands. Yeah, that was kind of funny. Spinel turns off her injector, and all seems fine, until she starts realizing that turning off the injector is all Steven really wanted from her. She thought that she was going to have a chance to be friends with Steven. She even says stuff like, "What are friends for?" But she starts to slowly realize that she was just kind of a means to an end. And Steven's replies, they don't really help that thought process. His lines on forgetting that this all ever happened are pushing all the wrong buttons, but it does make sense. He's tired and he just wants things to go back how they once were, which is basically saying before Spinel appeared, which starts to throw her into a panic. Mix that in with a misunderstanding about why Steven had the rejuvenator, and she goes straight back into her plans of taking her frustrations out on Steven and the Earth. That's actually a general part about Spinel's motivations that I really like. It's hard to specifically classify it as revenge, since Pink is gone, but she's simply filled with so much pain and sorrow that she's taking it out on others who have the happiness she wishes she had, and she believes she's justified in doing so. She believes everyone else is out to get her and couldn't ever see her as a friend, so she acts out in response to that. She does it all through a very heightened manner, probably due to her nature as a very cartoonish character, but the emotions do feel very real. It's not an okay thing to do, but I think it's easy for many to understand where her viewpoint comes from, since she is just a person that's hurting and doesn't know how to handle it. Back to fighting Steven, she gets a hold of Garnet and tries to goad Steven into attacking them both, to prove that she's in the right to believe that he wants to hurt her, with Steven proclaiming that this isn't the truth and breaking the rejuvenator to prove it. Right there is the last piece that Garnet needed to come back. The idea that when you face whatever truth life gives, that's when you get the realest kind of love. That's at least how I've interpreted it, you know, it's a bit vague, but yeah. And here we get one of the most iconic songs to come from this movie, True Kinda Love. It's a Garnet song, so it's kind of a masterpiece from that principle alone, but it's during this song that the gems go against Spinel again, and this time they're the ones kicking Spinel's ass. They're changing and adapting to what Spinel throws at them, while Spinel is stuck, not being able to move on from her own fears and insecurities, and as a last-ditch effort, releases all the remaining poison from the injector, which doesn't destroy the Earth, but instead causes immense damage to Beat City. While all the others go to help out all the citizens of Beach City, Steven's the one that's gotta face Spinel at the top of her injector, because of course he has to. For real though, I think it's actually pretty cool how all the other characters are using their abilities to save people instead of for some flashy action battle. It's sometimes just forgotten nowadays, but one of the best parts of superpowered stuff, or just superhuman superheroes, is when they actually have saving people as the main focus. While this is happening, Steven tries to reach the top of the injector with his powers, but oops, still not working, so he's forced to climb all the way up. He's been exhausted for a while now, but it's really clear that Steven's at his physical and mental limit. He's already had bags under his eyes for a good while now, and it's conveyed well how much he's struggling through all of this and is pushing himself to keep going. A great way of making the audience to especially root for Steven in this film. True Kind of Love is still playing as a backdrop to this whole sequence, and it creates an interesting vibe for this whole climax. Everything's in ruin, but we got this chilled out music to create a unique tone. I'm pretty sure many, including myself, largely associate this whole song with the trailer and promotions for the movie, and I'd say they picked a damn good track to represent this whole movie with. Finally at the top, Steven doesn't exactly have the best conversation with Spinel. His patience is running thin, and he just wants things to be done with, so Spinel straight up decks him in the face, like a legitimate punch that catches Steven off guard too. And then she punches him again, nearly knocking him off the injector and giving him a bloody nose. Owen holds him off the injector, ready to drop him thousands of feet in the air, for good measure. This is like straight up one of the closest moments Steven has ever been to being killed, and Spinel outright says that she wants to kill him. In frustration of all of this, it's here where Steven loudly asks why he hasn't gotten his powers back. Everyone's gotten them back through remembering or re-experiencing key moments of their lives, but Steven hasn't, and the events of this movie have already been stuff he's gone through in some sort of way. The writers are very aware of how similar events of this movie are to the original series, and use that to flesh out Steven's character right here, because as Spinel accidentally makes Steven realize, the most defining part of him throughout all those experiences was that he grew and changed. Steven says it better than I could, but that was always his power since the beginning of the series, the fact that he was always changing, even in the smallest ways, until he became the person he is now. It's with this realization that his powers come back, and with it, so does one of my favorite songs from the movie, Change. As Steven sings his heart out, he has his fight with Spinel, and this moment kicks so much ass! Steven focuses purely on the defense, blocking literally every hit Spinel throws out, while also trying to reason with her, which is slowly getting to her. I love the little bit during this where Spinel says that he can't change how she feels, which leads to Steven agreeing and saying that she's the only one who can change her feelings, and that really is the whole message of this song, and conflict with Spinel. The big difference between Steven taking on the Diamonds and taking on Spinel is that while Steven could change the mind of the Diamonds on who he is and convince them to give up their ways, Spinel has to be the one to change her own mind herself. Spinel's turn by the end of this movie isn't trying to say that everyone is redeemable, but that becoming a better person and learning how to change who you want to be is something that you have to do yourself. You either choose to make that change for yourself, or you don't. It's as simple as that. By the end of this fight, Spinel fully vents where her frustrations lie, her feeling that she isn't good enough to be loved if she was abandoned by Pink, and how she won't ever be good enough now that she's felt so damaged. After all those hits she dished out though, she starts running out of steam. Her anger can only take her so far, and now she's just left to wonder what was even the point of trying to hurt others. All she wants is to be a friend, and she's just stopping herself from ever having that again. And with that realization, she stops trying to attack Steven. But then the injector blows up right after. Steven and Spinel are fine though. That bubble of his can survive anything that it needs to. A lot of destruction has been caused, and all of Beach City is pretty much a mess, but at least the injector is no longer a problem. That happily ever after Steven wanted ain't happening, but as Steven says, there was never one to begin with. There's never going to be a point in life where you'll suddenly reach a perfect and flawless life with no more issues. It's as much of a fantasy as the fairy tales that use the phrase happily ever after. Steven meets up with his friends while reassuring Spinel that he'll be right back. I appreciate the reassurance, but maybe leaving her alone isn't the best call as you catch up with your buds. It's very clearly making her feel more isolated, although Steven reuniting with his buds is mainly meant to establish to them that he has his powers back, and can use them to heal all the damage to the earth. But how he's gonna do that, I don't know. He's just got spit. He's gonna spit everywhere. That's gross. Spinel tries to make her exit, despite knowing that Steven was going to return. She clears up that she's gonna make an effort to be better and learn how to be a friend again, but that would be hard to do with Steven and the others after everything she's put them through, which is certainly fair. But then here comes the Diamonds to create a convenient solution for Spinel's situation, and also kind of writing around a future. The Diamonds really wanted Steven to stay with them at the beginning, so the solution now is to just move him with Steven on Earth, and I just have no idea how that would work when they're, giant as hell. Steven isn't fond of the idea at all, and it's kind of hilarious how he just does not want to put up with their nonsense right now. The Diamonds have basically become those relatives Steven has no choice but to tolerate, since they're still making changes that are for the better, despite their construed motivations. But instead of Steven having to be with the Diamonds, Steven introduces them to Spinel, and they end up taking an immediate liking to her. Yellow's comment that 6,000 years is nothing was a bit uncalled for, but they've still got something here that can work, and decide to take Spinel back to Homeworld. Now we're given the reprised version of Let Us Adore You by the Diamonds, and the lyrics make so much more sense now. Being real, Steven had no idea what it meant to love Pink, but Spinel actually did, and this version of the song also mixes in the earlier song, Found, making this sort of the complete rendition of 2 previous tracks from the film. Also, it's just really cute to see Spinel put on a genuine smile after so long. Like, it's a bit debatable how right of a choice it really is to have Spinel be with the Diamonds when they're all technically linked together through Pink Diamond, and they kinda see Spinel as part of Pink. But as future will show, things worked out pretty well, and Spinel's finally happy. She ain't going to be here to help fix all the destruction she caused to Beach City though, but, she's happy. We're pretty much at the end of this film, but we're given one last song to close things off, Finale. It mixes in a lot of lyrics from Happily Ever After, but also change, to create this new meaning to the song, that as long as you're willing to change and grow, you'll always be in the future, capable of dealing with whatever it brings. This plays alongside visuals of Beach City being rebuilt, with this Broadway-esque number to end things off. Steven sings the final lyrics, and so the curtains close, ending Steven Universe, the movie. After all these years and finally finishing the whole series, I think this movie holds up really well, and I still really love it. It's basically a big celebration of everything that is Steven Universe. Fun characters with a lot of depth, a bunch of musical numbers, beautiful art direction, and a sincerity and heart that still feels very unique to Steven Universe. There's a lot to personally relate to, and just like the main series, I think that's why discussions of Steven Universe can get so involved. Besides Spinel, who was the big new thing, a lot of what happens with this movie and what it goes over is stuff that fans are likely well familiar with at this point. The movie doesn't tread completely new waters, but at the same time, this movie works really well as a means of getting back into Steven Universe for anyone that fell off over time. AKA the exact person I was when watching this movie. Someone gets spoiled on the reveals they missed out on, but hey, I was someone who got spoiled, and I still loved the later parts of Steven Universe just fine, and there were still a bunch of surprises left in store. Steven Universe, the movie, is still a really awesome time, and is another reason why I love Steven Universe as much as I do. If this was the last Steven Universe related thing we got, I'd still be satisfied. Luckily though, it wasn't, and the series continued in a certain direction that I don't think many saw coming. Perhaps we'll take a look at that sometime in the future. Well, that seems like a good place to call it for this video. If you enjoyed your time at all, subscribing, liking, commenting, all that junk would be very appreciated. If you're a Steven Universe fan, you can go and check out the first video I did on the original series, or you can watch the other videos I've done in the past on a bunch of different media. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.